Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Chat, my weekly movie podcast. And on this awesome addition to the series, we will be discussing Stephen King adaptations. Yes, that is right. The man himself, the horror legend himself, Stephen King, because he just had a brand new adaptation get put to screen in The Boogeyman this past weekend. I did review that movie, so you can either stick around for a few minutes and hear my thoughts on that, or you can go watch my full-length review for that film. Now, Stephen King has just some of the greatest stories of all time when it comes to horror. Like, this guy can write amazing horror stories that translate quite well to the big screen. And he's got a lot of adaptations out there. I haven't even seen all of them, but eventually I would like to see a lot more Stephen King adaptations and have, I don't know, like a very good knowledge on Stephen King adaptations. But besides that, what is, or I guess how are we going to discuss Stephen King adaptations on the podcast today? And that is quite simple. I'm just going to go through every Stephen King adaptation that I personally have seen in alphabetical order, and then we will, or I guess not we, because I'm just talking to myself here, I will share my thoughts on the film, and I will give my rating out of 5, as usual, for each of these films. Now, yeah. So I have my list pulled up, and honestly, out of this list, I have about 15-ish, I'd say, movies on this list. 2 of them are negative. 2 of them I would give negative reviews for. I'd say a vast majority of these are like 4 out of 5s and higher. So yeah, like, this is going to be very overwhelmingly positive today. I love positivity, I love positivity. You gotta spread that positivity, but except when we talk about 2 movies, I will take massive craps on them when I discuss them. So yeah, let's just kick this off, right? Because that's what we're here for, not me rambling about what I'm gonna do. Why don't we just do it? So we're going alphabetical order because the first movie is actually Boogeyman, or The Boogeyman, that just came out a few days ago. Like I said, I have a full review for this, but I'll give my thoughts on it real fast here. I had a good time with this one. Yeah, it's very derivative of stuff we've seen before, like in the vein of Smile that we got last year, which I think is a really, really good horror movie, or like It Follows. So it's very derivative, but it's a good version of that familiar story. I thought the lore of the Boogeyman was pretty cool. Nice creature design. They did a really cool thing with lighting in the movie, with like the shadows or like different ways they lit scenes. So I had a good time with this one. Is it anything special? No. But I did have a good time with this one for, just some random ass horror movie. Next up is actually my second least favorite Stephen King adaptation, and one of the 2 movies I'll be discussing today that I actually dislike. That's going to be Children of the Corn from 1984. I have watched this movie probably 3 times, and it just isn't good. I have no idea, like, what about this movie is just so dull and boring. Like, you have Linda Hamilton in this movie in one of your starring roles. It's like, come on, you got Sarah Connor herself. You have a fucking horror movie set in Nebraska, which, newsflash, I don't know if I've ever said this, I'm from Nebraska, so, like, hello, how many movies even mention Nebraska? We're not like New York City, where it gets blown up every 5 movies. No, Nebraska doesn't even get mentioned in movies. But holy shit, we got a movie that's set in Nebraska, and guess what? It's absolute dog shit. Anyways. But yeah, it's just kind of like this whole cult thingy isn't really, it's just not good. This is just such a boring story. I am bored. This movie bores the fuck out of me every time I watch it. Like, I'd say out of all of the movies on this list, this is the most boring out of all of them. In I haven't even seen the rest of the Children of the Corn movies because if the original is this fucking terrible, god damn, I don't want to watch the rest of this franchise, which I've heard this one's actually like the best one. If I hate this one, god damn, what the rest of the franchise like? Probably the rest of the franchise is probably like the Children of the Corn from that came out this year. Good God, that movie, fucking Corn Groot. Anyways, Children of the Corn, boring as shit. Next up, a movie that I think is a tad bit overhated, actually. That's gonna be The Dark Tower from 2017. Oh wait, I forgot to share my score on Children of the Corn. Yeah, the original, like a 1.5 out of 5. Fuck that movie. Next up, we got The Dark Tower from 2017, which I think this movie's quite overhated. Is it amazing? No, but I think it's a decent movie. It's got some nice lore in there. I like Idris Elba in this cool action movie, like this Western gunslinger type thing. I don't like Matthew McConaughey in this movie, but yeah, like the dimensions in this movie and like just the lore of like what the Dark Tower is, I guess kind of Matthew McConaughey's plan in the movie, there's interesting stuff going on there. It's just not executed the best. Admittedly, it has been a while since I've seen this movie, but I remember when this came out and people were just crapping all over this movie, like abysmal, one of the worst things I've ever seen. And I watched it and I was like, where are you guys coming from? Like, did you guys watch one of the Children of the Corn movies? Because, like, come on, this isn't that bad. Like, it's not amazing, it's decent, but like, come on, guys, come on, what y'all doing? All right, next up. Oh yeah, my rating. Why do I always forget the damn ratings? Like a 3 out of 5, right? So it's like barely skating on the edge there, but I can get some enjoyment out of this one. Next up, probably one of the biggest surprises on this list, and one of my favorite theater experiences, I will say that as well. That's gonna be Dr. Sleep from 2019. Now, when you follow up The Shining, which we'll get to later, when you follow up what is like widely regarded as one of the best horror movies of all time and a very popular answer for favorite horror movie of all time, you're gonna follow that up. Like, doesn't matter when you do it, you're following that up. That's like a near impossible task to make a good movie. And the fact that it's a long delayed sequel 39 years later, almost 4 decades later. When you have like a gap between sequels like that, most times it doesn't work. And you're making a sequel to a Stanley Kubrick film. And Stanley Kubrick is just regarded as one of the best directors of all time, one of the most important directors in cinematic history. So you have those 3 things going against you, and they actually made a movie that was really damn good. So, I mean, this is such an amazing achievement that they were able to get past all 3 of those hurdles and still deliver an amazing film. Now, with that being said, I've never been as high on Dr. Sleep as I feel like a lot of people have. I give it a rating of 4 out of 5 stars, which is a very good and a very respectable score for a movie. There's just some things that don't quite work in the movie for me. I think at times it can be a little bit slow. I think, I don't know, like, it's a little bit of this is probably the biggest mixed thing for this movie is there's not enough of the Shining sequels, like enough tie-ins to the Shining that I would have personally put into this movie, but at the same time that also disconnects this from the Shining, so that way when you're watching it's just like, oh yeah, this is a really good horror movie, so you're not thinking of, oh yeah, this is in the Shining, if that makes sense. It's like its biggest pro and its biggest con for me is the exact same thing, which is really weird. But yeah, I saw this movie in theaters. It was a great theater experience. I went with some friends who really loved The Shining, and it was just a really fun night to go. And when you're sitting in that theater and the Overlook Hotel theme starts blaring in the theater after waiting for that theme for like 2 hours, damn, that gave me goosebumps. amazing theater experience, great movie. I love all that Shining stuff at the end where you get all that payoff. You have this amazing story beforehand about the shine and like very thematically rich and stuff. So yeah, Doctor Sleep is incredible. If you haven't checked it out because of one of those three things that I've said might have been keeping you at arm's distance from this one, definitely check out Doctor Sleep, a very, very good sequel to The Shining. And honestly, now when I watch The Shining, I do a double feature of The Shining and Doctor Sleep. So very, very good movie and adaptation. Next up is probably my least favorite Stephen King adaptation. It's between this and Children of the Corn. They both fucking suck, but Firestarter from last year. This movie was terrible. It was so damn generic. There was barely anything positive I said. This might be the movie I hate the most that I've reviewed on my channel. I don't even hate this movie. I just strongly dislike it. It just sucks. This might be my least favorite movie I've reviewed on my channel. Because I do have a review for this one, actually. Yeah, I don't know. My mom was like, hey, are you going to go see that Firestarter movie? I was like, probably. And she's like, I'm kind of interested in that. So we went and saw it. We got to the theater. I'm like, Mom, why would you want to go see that? Like, that is terrible. She's like, well, you were going to go see it. I'm like, because I can fucking see everything. Anyways, yeah, like, it just felt like 15,000 other movies we've seen. Kind of like The Boogeyman, I guess, but this one was more boring to me and more bland. Kind of like Children of the Corn. Boring-ass story that I don't fucking care about, so, yeah. I know that this is like a remake of like one from the 80s that I believe starred Drew Barrymore, but given how much I did not like this modern adaptation of it, I probably won't check out that one from the 80s. Because, yeah, no. Firestarter, no bueno. Alright, next up we got a trifecta here of the It movies. So you got the 1990 miniseries, the 2017 Chapter 1, and the 2019 Chapter 2. It 1990 I really enjoy. Certainly it's dated in some areas. That whole spider thing at the end is kind of like, whatever. But I have a blast with it, you know. Tim Curry as Pennywise is really fun. Getting to see some people like Seth Green when he was really young was really cool. Damn. Also just like it feels more classic, you know, like a classic Pennywise. I would say out of the two It adaptations, this one feels more like what Stephen King was probably talking about when he made his book, you know, like a more original type thing, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy this one. It's dated as fuck, but it's those things that date this movie makes me love it. So I've always had a blast with this one. And I give that one a 4 out of 5. Oh, I forgot to say what I give Firestarter. I give Firestarter 1.5 out of 5. The movie sucks. Anyways. Moving on to It Chapter 1 from 2017. I'm just going to say right away, this is a 5 out of 5 for me. This is like in my top 3 favorite horror movies of all time. I absolutely love this movie, adore it. This is one of the first horror movies I ever saw in theaters. I remember I went on Halloween with a group of my friends, and that was really fun to see this movie. Made me fall in love with Pennywise. This is one of the movies that made me just fall in love with horror. So, yeah, It Chapter 1 2017, hilarious. That cast of kids is amazing. Pennywise is incredible in this movie. I mean, it is between him and Jason Voorhees for who my favorite horror villain is. So, yeah, Bill Skarsgård did an incredible job. So many quotable moments from this movie, too. So, yeah, I absolutely adore this movie, and, yeah, love it to death. However, I messed that transition up. It Chapter 2. is not as good. I think it is clearly the weakest of the It movies while still being a watchable film that I enjoy. There's so many just weird things that they did in this movie. Like, what the fuck was up with that whole Angel of the Morning bit in the middle of it? Like, what? That was so weird and random. Like, did you let a 4-year-old edit that part in the movie? Or, I have no idea, man. That scene, every time, it sucks me out of the movie. So long. This movie's way longer than it needs to be. And it's, like, so cyclical where the first act is, oh, call the losers, and oh, Pennywise is back, and then they go to Derry, and it like does that like for 7 people, and then the second act they're like, okay, let's go to this place. Oh, I remembered something about an encounter with Pennywise, and then Pennywise shows up in real time and scares the fuck out of me. It does that shit for 2 whole acts. This movie's like almost 3 hours long, so like, goddamn. But it's enjoyable. I mean, I'll always get enjoyment out of seeing more Pennywise. I like some of the casting for the older crew, so yeah, it's decent, but a pretty major letdown for me considering I adore that first, It Chapter 1. Next up, we have The Mist from 2007. And I just watched this for the first time last year. There's a pretty funny story behind this one, right? So, for years, my mom has told me she hates The Mist and it's her least favorite movie of all time. We used to own this movie on DVD, and my mom hates this movie so much, she threw the DVD away. I'm not kidding. Like, she actually threw the DVD away. And so, the genius I am, for Christmas, I bought her the book The Mist, and gave it to her for Christmas. And I said, here you go. And she opened it and threw it at me. Said some obscenities as well. And so then she read the book. And then she's like, hey, I actually kind of want to watch the movie again. I'm like, bro, I thought you hated that movie. She's like, yeah, well, I kind of want to see what it's like compared to the book. I'm like, okay, I'll watch it because I've never seen it with you. So we watched it, and I really enjoyed it. And she was like, oh, I guess I kind of enjoy that more. But yeah, she hates that movie because the ending, I don't hate the ending, but it's pretty much like a dude, what the fuck just happened ending. It's a very downer ending. But anyways, that fun story out of the way, The Mist, I think this movie's incredible. I give it a 4 out of 5. It's just such an interesting story where, like, you're isolated in this store and you can't leave the store because there's all these creatures out in the mist, but then people are turning on each other in the store, and it's so tense. Got a lot of really interesting and cool characters in there. I love how they venture out into the mist sometimes, or like where they go to that other building with all the fucking spiders. That shit scares me. Oh, I hate bugs and spiders. Or you get like all the different ways they try and like see what's out in the mist, where they like tie the rope to the guy, or just This movie is so atmospheric, and the fact that like all the creatures in the mist are bugs is creepy as hell. Because I do not like bugs. And if the mist was real, I would probably piss my pants. Speaking of pissing my pants, we have Pet Sematary. I don't know how the hell that was a good transition, but hey, we got the original Pet Sematary from 1989. This is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think this movie is incredible. This is one of the scariest films of all time. Like, that shit with Zelda is pure nightmare fuel. She is scary as hell. You have a very, very interesting story here about like grief and loss and death and dying, some pretty dark subject matter, and just a very interesting concept of like going and burying the dead and then they come back to life, but like they're like this evil version of them. So that's always, or not always, well, every time I watch this movie, it's always a really interesting journey and story to go through. I really like all the characters in here, especially Judd, played by Fred Gwynn, I believe is the guy's name. He does great in this movie. Yeah, this is an incredible horror movie, and genuinely makes me a little bit scared every time I watch this. So maybe that's how pissing my pants relates to this, because maybe I get so scared I piss my pants. Anyways, next up we got Pet Sematary remake from 2019, right? This one, it's a modern adaptation of that original story. Not quite as good. Like, if I'm gonna watch a Pet Sematary story, I'm gonna watch the original from 1989, not the 2019 remake. But as far as this movie goes, it is an enjoyable movie. I could throw it on and have fun with it. I like the actors in this movie, although I don't think they are nearly as good as the original. I just prefer everything in the original, honestly, to this one. But this one's fine, right? It's fine. I have a good time with it. I give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Like, really the only main thing is that, like, it's trying to remake one of my favorite horror films of all time. So, like, yeah, you're not going to dethrone that. So, sorry. All right, next up. Speaking of things that will not be dethroned, my all-time favorite Stephen King adaptation, and I never foresee this movie ever being dethroned, as it is sitting very comfortably in my top 3 favorite films of all time. That is The Shawshank Redemption from 1994. The clear best movie from 1994. Get all that Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction bullshit out of here, even though I really like Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction. No. Shawshank Redemption all the way, baby. This is a perfect movie. Like, if I had to, from a purely objective standpoint, defend a film as perfect, I'm picking The Shawshank Redemption. It's the most perfect movie ever made. I don't give a shit what you say. This is one of the few times where I will tell you that your opinion is wrong if you think The Shawshank Redemption isn't a perfect film, because you are wrong. This is a perfect movie. But I love this movie in a way that words can't really describe. I watch this movie at least once a year. It's just one of the most engulfing stories of all time. Like, this movie is so captivating. You got awesome themes of friendship and hope. You got amazing cast in here, like iconic cast. You got iconic moments, like, how many prison movies have you seen where the person tunnels through the wall, right? Comes from this movie, The Shawshank Redemption. It's so iconic that, like, every other movie involving a prison rips it off, and they never do it as good. But yeah, this movie is so damn incredible. It is infinitely rewatchable. Like I said, it's in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. It's a perfect 5 out of 5 movie for me any day of the week you ask. It's pure cinematic perfection. So yeah, I adore this movie. It will probably never be dethroned as my favorite Stephen King adaptation, unless some other ungodly amazing movie comes out in my lifespan. It'll probably always remain in my top 3 favorite films of all time. So yeah, if you haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your life, but you need to change that immediately and go watch this movie. As your homework assignment is to watch this movie, and then comment down below in this video, or not video, but in the comment section on YouTube, because yeah, it's gonna be like a video thing. Anyways, and comment why you think it is also perfect. And if you say anything other than it's perfect, I'm deleting your comment and blocking you. So and then the final movie we got to talk about today is The Shining from 1980, which I give a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, come on. It's an amazing horror movie. It's just one of the greatest horror films ever made. It's in my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. The Shining and John Carpenter's Halloween are like the two most popular picks for favorite horror movie of all time. And if you want to say one of them's your favorite horror film of all time, I'm not going to disagree with you, right? Because I totally understand where you're coming from. Just, this film is incredible. I mean, it's probably my favorite Stanley Kubrick film. It's tied between The Shining and Doctor Strangelove. But Stanley Kubrick, master at directing. I just love the way he frames shots in his movies. The use of sound in this movie is incredible. The slow build in this movie is awesome. Jack Nicholson's performance as Jack Torrance is one of the best horror performances of all time. The Overlook Hotel, such an interesting location. Like, this is one of the most dissected movies of all time. Like, there's full documentaries on this movie. I mean, the layout of the hotel has been analyzed because it just doesn't make sense. Like, physically doesn't make sense. Like, how are there certain windows in certain spots? Like, this movie is extremely dissected, and it's one of those movies where every single time I watch it, no matter how many times I've seen this movie, every time I watch it, I pick up on something different, or I interpret something just a little bit differently. It's just one of the most beautifully ambiguous movies of all time, with that final shot of the film with Jack Torrance standing in that, like in that picture of him standing at some party or something from like the 20s, I believe. Like, that ending shot is still being discussed on what it means 43 years later. That is incredible. That you made a movie 43 years ago, and the ending to the movie is still being debated to this day. Like, that's insane. So, yeah. The Shining, incredible movie. I can't take anything away from it. Yeah, I think it's a great movie. But that does it. That is all the Stephen King adaptations that I have seen discussed in alphabetical order. Go ahead and let me know what some of your favorite Stephen King adaptations are and why The Shawshank Redemption is your favorite one, because that's the correct answer. But if you feel like giving some incorrect answers as well, go ahead and do that. I'll just make fun of you for it. But yes, go ahead and share what some of your favorite Stephen King adaptations are. And I believe that is all I got to say. Oh, I got one more thing to say. Next week, we will be talking about the Transformer movies, the absolute perfect 5 out of 5 across the board franchise, because all of those movies are high-class cinema. So we will be discussing those next week because, well, we got a new Transformers movie coming out. So, yep, that's the topic for next week. And, yeah, that does it now for real this time. So, thank you so much for listening to Cinema Chat, and have an excellent rest of your day.